Hi, I'm Natalie Jackson, and I am the self-appointed plant detective. And I'm here today starting my new video series where I answer plant questions and give gardening advice. So if you have any questions about houseplants or succulents, cacti, vegetable gardening, container gardening, balcony gardening, anything you've got, throw it at me and I will find you the information and answer it on video. So I want you to know that I am a gardener of 6 years. Haven't been doing it too long, but I have enough experience to know what I'm talking about. I've been a master gardener for a few months now. This is my first year, and I'm very excited to go out and share information. And I think this is a great way for me to share information with people who are already actively nurturing plants and want to make sure they're doing it right. So I'm excited to start with a few questions that I've received. If you want to submit your question, go ahead and you'll see right here my Instagram handle, which is Natalie Cultivates, and my website, cultivatelovela.com. You can go ahead and submit questions through there, and you can send photos and videos too. That'll greatly help with identifying plants and figuring out what the problems are. And you'll see today I'm going to be answering 4 questions from 4 lovely people who submitted questions to my call for action. And I really appreciate that. And we're going to be answering each question and explaining a little bit of what the problem is or what the concern is and what to do. So let's get started. The first question that I have is from Kristy. Kristy is a fellow master gardener, and she was over at the Huntington Gardens in San Marino by Pasadena, and she saw this beautiful goldenrod and wanted to know if I could help her figure out what kind of goldenrod it is. Now, in my search, I saw that there were about 75 different species of goldenrod. And less than 20 of those are found in California. So I was able to narrow down the search a bit. You can see through these pictures, it is a taller marigold and it has really interesting leaves for a marigold plant. And this is a photo she took of one that was starting to come up and bud. But my favorite is when it is blooming. As you can see here, goldenrod really lives up to its name. It is a very beautiful flower. And this is kind of an overview of the goldenrod plant in full bloom next to a beautiful cactus. And this goldenrod is different from most in its shape of its leaves and the way the flowers are arranged. And so after doing some research, I have found that this is a California native, like it was suspected, but that it was specifically the one all the way over at the end, Solidago velutina, subspecies californica. I like saying plant names because you can say it with like a really fancy accent, and it's pretty fun. So yeah, so I think it's the one all the way over at the end, and the leaf shape looks right, the flowers, the way they are structured look right, so I believe that's what it is. Kristy, take this information and run with it. I know you will, and you will bring back more news as soon as you have it, but I think this is what it is. And keep them coming. Send more questions if you've got them. And so the next person that sent me a question is Rachel. Rachel is a wonderful vendor from the Melrose Trading Post, where I also work, and she has been sending me her gardening questions for quite a while and is actually the inspiration for this video series, so thank you, Rachel. And so Rachel has this beautiful zucchini plant, and she, there's some spots where it looks a little rough, it doesn't quite look as strong, and so she's concerned about it, and she's been getting some not really fully forming fruit. So these are little zucchini flowers that were pollinated, but maybe not properly, or maybe didn't have enough nutrients to fully form. But she is having some success with this technique, which is called hand pollinating. And so when you're hand pollinating, you're taking the male flower and you are basically rubbing it up against the female flower to spread the pollen. So this is something that a lot of people do with squash, and it is very effective. And I do recommend doing it too, but it may also be good to get some plants that are flowers that bees really like and have them around the area too, just because the more pollinators you have in the area, the better chance that all your vegetables will do well. And so bringing in some flowers that bees and butterflies and other important pollinators like will really also help your chances of your vegetables fully forming. And so Rachel has had some success here, as you can see, but she wants more, and I don't blame her. So I do recommend bringing in other plants to attract pollinators, to continue hand pollinating, and also to fertilize a bit, because if you're not fertilizing your vegetable plants, they may not take off as well, and they may not give as much as you would like. So you can do so with some compost or manure, like adding a layer of it on top and watering in really deeply so it leaches down to the roots. You may also want to use a liquid fertilizer or a powdered fertilizer, but the main thing is to get the nutrients to the roots. So make sure whatever you're doing, you're also supplementing by watering it in. If it is a liquid fertilizer, you don't need to water it in because it is in water. If you water right after, you'll actually just push the nutrients past the roots. So do follow the directions on anything that you decide to get, and it'll tell you what to do for the appropriate plant. And sometimes the fertilizer companies will have websites where they'll tell you if you have a zucchini, this is how often you should be fertilizing and how much. So definitely recommend doing that. You can choose to go organic or not. Organics tend to smell organic, which some people like, some people don't like. And, but they tend to be safer if you have pets. So that might be something to keep in mind too. So Rachel, I hope this helps. Keep me posted. I want to see more zucchinis happening. And less of this. All right. So the next question that I have, there we go. Okay. It is from Angie, and Angie and my cousin are married and they live in Denmark. And so they have orchids. And so this is a moth orchid, and I can show you a photo that she took right here of one she purchased recently. And so it's a beautiful orchid. It is a very typical houseplant because it's very easy to grow indoors, and it is so beautiful, and they really do make a great gift and bring people a lot of joy. And so the moth orchid is also known as the Phalaenopsis. No, we'll try again. Phalaenopsis. Sis. So sis, you gotta make sure that with orchids, they have a few different elements to get them growing. So she's propagated several, as you can see here, they've given her some babies from her original plant, but she's saying that the problem is that all of these new ones that have been growing have not been flowering. Now, I will say, in looking into these plants, it does say their typical flowering seasons are fall through spring. So fall, winter, and spring, not really summer. So it is not quite the time for them to bloom right now. But once the fall comes around, and in Denmark, it's probably going to get a little colder, I imagine, sooner than it would out here in California. But as soon as fall rolls around, you want to start fertilizing these guys. So I read that with a balanced fertilizer, like a 2-2-2 across the board fertilizer, you can fertilize it weekly by diluting a serving, essentially, of fertilizer and feeding it to them once a week. And that will help them bloom. Making sure that they have indirect sunlight like these seem to have is very important. If you have a window that at some point in the day the sun shines directly on them, you want to get some kind of a curtain or something, or just make sure they're not in the path of that direct sunlight because they will get burnt. But it looks like here they're in good shape in a bright area, which is very good for them and great for blooming. But it will take a little time, so just make sure we get through the summer and then start fertilizing, and you'll have some flowers in no time. And once they are flowering, once a flower is done, like a stem is done, if you cut it back, there are little tiny leaves right by the flowers. If you cut it back to that leaf, another flower should come up. Also, a lot of people will just cut the whole stem and then a new stem will emerge if you're fertilizing. So those are some options to get multiple blooms in 1 year. So I hope this helps you, Angie, and send me photos of all your blooming beautiful orchids because I cannot wait to see them. All right, and now my last question of the day comes from Vanessa. And Vanessa has this beautiful blue Chalksticks. It's a succulent. Let's see if I could do this. Senecio serpens. And serpens, kind of like serpent, looks a little bit like a snake. So you can see where the name comes from. Colloquially, that was a hard one. Colloquially, we say blue Chalksticks, and because in the sunlight they do have a little bit of a bluish tone to them. These plants look pretty good, but Vanessa is concerned that they're not really at optimal growth, that there's some dieback on some of the leaves. So I would definitely say trim off any of the parts that look like dead and put them back into the soil if you can, just to recycle those nutrients. And with this is actually a beautiful succulent from Drunken Succulents at the Melrose Trading Post. And the way that they do this is they reuse bottles of all different kinds and they cut them and turn them into planters. And it is a great green business. And so I think with this, Vanessa was saying that she puts an ice cube on it and lets it melt. And I think she does this maybe once or twice a week. Maybe once a week. I'll confirm that. But I think it would be best to make sure that all of the soil gets wet when you do water. So a very little bit of water, but all the way around to make sure the soil is completely wet will help the roots and will help it grow. You don't really need to use fertilizer for these because you also don't want it to get too big since it's such a small container. So I would say just water it well so that top part with the soil gets really wet. And then below the top part of the soil is all rocks. So you want to make sure the rocks stay relatively dry because you don't want any bacteria growing in the bottom of the bottle. That could definitely hurt the plant, and we don't want that to happen. So just make sure that you're giving it enough sunlight too. But it does look like the one plant does look really healthy. It just has a little bit of leaf dieback, which we can fix. But make sure that when you water it so the soil gets all wet, and then don't water it again until it's completely dried out. And that kind of goes with most succulents. Some are different, but most of them you want to water thoroughly and then let it completely dry out before you give it any other water. So Vanessa, I hope that helps with your plant, and keep me updated. I want to see how your plant grows. And so yeah, those were the 4 questions of the day. Keep sending more in. I have plenty more. I know Rachel sent a bunch more, so I'll be answering them as often as I can. The goal is to do 2 videos a month, but I may do more, just depending on the schedule. But I'm excited that this has launched. Thank you so much for watching my premiere video, and send me your questions at Natalie Cultivates on Instagram and cultivatelovela.com. Well, I'll see you next time. Thank you so much for tuning in. Like, subscribe, do all the things you're supposed to do to keep getting these, and join my email list on cultivatelovela.com if you want to hear more from me. Thank you so much, and have a lovely day, Earthlings.